reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year in the Excellence in the Arts Award. And is one of the highest Arbitrum, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. Hey everybody, great to see you all again. I am Doug Basham, your certified card-carrying member of the Enemy Within Brigade, also known as one radical leftist lunatic who needs to be handled by the American military. That said, I welcome you all to day 22 of Morning in America, morning spelled with a U, of course, as all true patriots who love this country prepare to wave goodbye to their democracy and anxiously await the stroke that just might save America and mankind. My website is DougBasham.com, last name spelled B as in Bob, A-S-H-A-M as in mayhem, DougBasham.com, my email, Doug@DougBasham.com. That said, I extend a warm yet doleful welcome to those of you listening on KSHP, AM 1400 and 107.1 FM on your radio dial here in Las Vegas. We are also broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and X. And we will return to TikTok at precisely 11:15 a.m. Pacific time today, which is the exact same time they kicked me off last Tuesday. That is, if I remember to hit the Go Live button on my phone. Now, if you go to my website, again, DougBasham.com, you will discover it's all of one page. At the top, you'll find the show's logo. Underneath, 11 links, most to my social media sites. Also want to contact me via email. Now, the two links I'd like to call your attention to the most are, one, my YouTube page, and two, my TikTok page. On my YouTube page, I would respectfully ask you hit the subscribe button. On TikTok, please hit the red follow button. And hey, if you would like to watch the show live and not just listen to it, and why wouldn't you? Obviously, this face was made for television. The reason being, this show is very clip intensive, and when I play clips, I play video clips. So if you want to watch it live, just go to my website. From there, go to my YouTube, Facebook, or X pages, and lo and behold, you can indeed watch the show live. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you would like to talk on the radio somewhere in our second half hour together, that's 702-221-SAVE, as in, when it was time to save our democracy, we didn't. And now on to what I have been calling of late our broken news for the day. Firstly, if you missed yesterday's show, I announced this week will be the last week this show will be on this radio station, at least for now. We're on today, obviously, will be on tomorrow. Thursday is Thanksgiving. The station will be closed. They'll be running a sports show, and then we'll wrap things up on Friday. I am taking a much-needed break to reflect, to reassess, and decide if I want to spend the next 4 years talking about a traitor who should be in prison instead of the White House. And the same guy over whom I made the conscious choice to live in his cesspool of dishonesty and criminality on the air for the first 4 years he debased and disgraced this country. And me. But again, by my own choosing. I gave the orange traitor permission to debase and disgrace me by willfully choosing and agreeing to be on the air while he was in office. So I guess, in short, I have no one to blame but myself. But now I'm kind of looking at the old axiom and rephrasing it. Fool myself once, shame on me. Fool myself twice, well, slap my ass and call me Sally. But like I said yesterday, if the right opportunity were to present itself, I would be more than willing to jump right back into the Trump cesspool of rancid shit for another 4 years. I'm just doubtful that prospect will indeed manifest itself. And one of my constant, repeated complaints for literally years now has been Democrats don't get media. And you know, in the one area I wanted to be wrong and wished to be proved wrong, I wasn't. And what I've seen since this election, which should be a huge wake-up call for Democrats, at least with regards to media, what I've seen is that they definitely wake up, but then immediately hit the snooze button over and over and over again, just like they have the past 24 years I've been on the radio. And also, like I said yesterday, just the first 3 weeks since this election have been challenging, torturous, watching this repulsive orange sexual deviant picking other repugnant sexual deviants to be in his cabinet. And what is so confounding and incongruous is pretty much everybody he has chosen at one point in their lives not only knew what an appalling and atrocious human being Donald Trump is, but they verbalized it. We have them on tape. Only, of course, to change their weak, malleable minds when it became a matter of political survival for them to do so. In other words, they're just like Trump. They stand for nothing except their own prestigious positions in government and the power those positions afford them, for which they are willing to sell their souls rather than risk losing. Now, longtime listeners to this show know my heartfelt affinity for MSNBC's Nicole Wallace. I think she is one of the best hosts on cable news. She asks detailed questions, she asks nuanced questions, and she has guests on who give equally detailed and nuanced responses. And she's drop dead gorgeous, which doesn't hurt. Although I like to think I have evolved enough that I would like her even if she looked like Trump's former press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. No, I haven't evolved that far yet. Let's call it a work in progress. So, while I am totally in love with Nicole Wallace, I have to say, and I've said so on the show in the past, Alicia Menendez is a close second. And she is one of the few hosts who can fill in for Nicole, who can measure up to the standards Nicole sets for her shows. Add to that her eyes. Oh, those eyes. They burn a hole in my very soul. And yes, the rhyming was intentional. So, I mentioned yesterday how Donald Trump would sell this country out in a heartbeat if he thought it would benefit him and him alone. And he's doing it already. Listen to this story from the New York Times as delivered by my gal, MSNBC's Alicia Menendez.
Even as he fills out his cabinet at a rapid pace, Donald Trump's return to the White House shrouded in secrecy. Team Trump following little of the norms and conventions put in place for the transfer of power. It's raising lots of questions about why the incoming administration wants to keep Americans in the dark about everything from who is funding the transition to who exactly are the people who will lead the country, for the next 4 years. Brand new reporting from the New York Times laying out the consequences of Donald Trump's refusing to sign an agreement with the government to kickstart the transition process. From that reporting, quote, President-elect Donald Trump is keeping secret the names of the donors who are funding his transition effort, a break from tradition that could make it impossible to see what interest groups, businesses, or wealthy people are helping launch a second term. Trump has so far declined to sign an agreement with the Biden administration that imposes strict limits on that fundraising in exchange for up to $7.2 million in federal funds earmarked for the transition. By dodging the agreement, Trump can raise unlimited amounts of money from unknown donors to pay for the staff, travel, and office space involved in preparing to take over the government. Unlike with campaign contributions, foreign nationals are allowed to donate to the transition. Joining our conversation, New York Times investigative reporter David Fahrenthold. Molly is also back with us. David, I want to start with you. We read a bit of your reporting. Every president has raised money for the transition. How is this different?
Well, as you said, most presidents raise money from the public, but also take money from the government. And in doing so, they agree to some conditions. They agree to disclose who their donors are and how much they gave. And they agree to limit the amount of any donation from any one person to $5,000. Trump is not doing any of that. He doesn't have to. There's no law that says he has to. But he is saying, I'll raise all the money from the public. I won't take any government money. And in return, I get to keep secret who's giving me money and how much they gave. And I also get to not abide by the limit of $5,000 per donor. So this whole transition will be funded in the dark.
So let us review. Trump has refused to sign the traditional transition agreement. Why? When he would receive $7.2 million from the government. Well, because if he did, there are strict fundraising restrictions, and he would have to reveal who his donors are. By not signing, he can take unlimited amounts of money, and not only that, from secret donors, including foreign ones, which will make the government's $7.2 million look paltry by comparison. And color me skeptical and cynical, but I don't think much of that money will be coming from Canada or the UK or France or Australia. You seeing a pattern here? Which begs the question, why is he doing this? Why does he want to be able to receive unlimited amounts of money and from foreign sources? Why does he not want to tell the American people from where it's originating? As you just heard, there's no law that says he has to, which begs this question, why isn't there a law? And the answer is because no other president has been this shady and unpatriotic and tried this before. So, guess where his foreign money will be coming from? I'll bet the farm it won't be from leaders of democracies. Trump hates democracy and sees leaders of democracies as weak and ineffectual. And the next question we need to ask is, this ungodly secret amount of money he's going to rake in from God knows where, at what cost to us, to the United States? Hey, Trumpers, your orange idol doesn't want you to know where he's getting his money from and who will have influence over him. You okay with that? Does that raise any suspicions in your mind? Of course it doesn't. Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base will be just fine with whatever he does because in Trump, they trust. Because that's what cult members do. Add to that, this report, once again, from my gal, Alicia Menendez.
There's also a reason that the FBI background checks have been standard. That weaves into this conversation. It's a consequence of his not having signed this memo of agreement. I want you to take a listen to what Barbara McQuaid had to say about that. The process is designed to screen out candidates who are not suitable for high-level decision-making positions because of problems such as addiction, psychological disorders, or a history of committing sexual abuse. A nominee with foreign business interests may skew decisions that favor his overseas portfolio. Perhaps more importantly, the process seeks to weed out potential targets for blackmail because of undisclosed personal secrets, conflicts of interest, foreign ties, or financial distress. Imagine a cabinet official who is hiding an extramarital affair. They may be tempted to share government secrets in exchange for silence. Or think of a broke cabinet official who is so desperate for money they're willing to sell their access to government information. A background investigation assures the public that officials in sensitive positions can be trusted to act in the best interests of the American people. Not having these screenings has huge consequences for high-level decision-making in the U.S. government.
Isn't she adorable? Anyhow, so Trump is bypassing traditional FBI background checks for some of his cabinet picks. And this raises the same exact questions. The obvious one, why? Why would he not want the FBI to scrutinize those he's choosing to lead government? And the answer is obvious, because he knows they couldn't pass it. But the other question is, why is he being allowed to get away with this? And I don't give a continental rat's ass if there's no law saying he doesn't have to. It's not only traditional, but it is traditional for an obvious reason. It is a common sense step to take regarding the national security of the United States. Just one more reason why the stewardship of this country should not be turned over to him. This alone is enough reason. Although there's plenty more and even more dangerous ones, like the Constitution should be terminated. There's that. This orange traitor is a threat to this country's national security, and the only place he should be moving to in January is prison. And let's imagine here, let us imagine Trump were president now, and the Harris administration was A, refusing to sign the traditional transition agreement, opting instead to raise unlimited amounts of money, including from foreign countries, and B, refusing to let the FBI do background checks on their cabinet picks. What do you think Trump would be doing now? No, seriously, what do you think Trump would be doing now? You know the answer. He would be in front of the cameras every single day, commanding the national media's attention and this country's by proxy. He would be blasting the Harris administration as being an enemy of this country. Hell, he did that when he had no reason to. What do you think he'd be doing if they gave him a reason? And I will bet you dollars to donuts he would be saying they were too dangerous to turn the country over to. He would be calling for them to be arrested, thrown in jail, prosecuted for treason, and executed. And his right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media, and his brain-dead MAGA cult base would be solidly behind him. Anyone disagree? But you see, Trump isn't president now. Joe Biden is. And where is he on these latest anti-American, unpatriotic stunts by Trump? As always, MIA, radio silence, not a word, not a peep, except to keep reaffirming he'll turn the country over to this orange traitor. I'll repeat what I said yesterday. It is hard, it is damn hard to be a Democrat these days. Moving on, we learned yesterday morning of Special Counsel Jack Smith's motion to dismiss his cases against Trump, both in Washington, D.C. and in Florida, but without prejudice, which could mean several things we'll get to shortly. The aforementioned Alicia Menendez broke this Jack Smith news. Now, I could just take screenshots of the quotes Alicia features and read them myself, but frankly, I'd rather listen to and look at Alicia Menendez. Guilty as charged, just like Trump.
Hello, everyone. It is 4 o'clock here in New York. I'm Alicia Menendez, in for Nicole Wallace. 3.5 years since the attack on the U.S. Capitol. 17 months after Donald Trump was criminally charged by the government he once led and will lead once more. Special Counsel Jack Smith's cases against Donald Trump, well, they are coming to a close. Just this afternoon, the special counsel moving to dismiss the federal election case. They also asked a court to dismiss his appeal of Judge Eileen Cannon's ruling, tossing out his indictment of Trump in the classified documents case. The move was expected with Trump's election victory, since it's the Justice Department's policy that sitting presidents cannot be prosecuted.
Just adorable. Oh, and just to clarify for anyone who's not aware, this DOJ policy to which Alicia just referred, it's not even that. It's a memo, an interoffice memo, maybe even written on a napkin or a Post-it note. It's not a law. It's not in the Constitution. It's just a memo. But do you think this administration will challenge it? Pigs will fly first. As for the Constitution, the reason there's nothing in it that is relevant to this current situation is because our founding fathers never envisioned the American people being so stupid as to elect a convicted felon with several more criminal cases pending. And just on a side note, it's kind of ironic. Something the founding fathers did include in the Constitution was the now dated, archaic, and arcane, not to mention anti-democratic, Electoral College. And believe it or not, their original intent for what has become an abomination, and the only way conservatives could win elections, at least until this one, their original intent for the Electoral College was so that someone like Donald Trump wouldn't even be a party's nominee, let alone be afforded the opportunity to be elected to the presidency. Now, their original intent fell by the wayside rather quickly, but we'll give them half a point for effort. Alicia continued.
The move was expected with Trump's election victory, since it's the Justice Department's policy that sitting presidents cannot be prosecuted. Smith, writing in his filing to Judge Chutkan today, quote, "The department and the country have never faced the circumstance here where a federal indictment against a private citizen has been returned by a grand jury and criminal prosecution is already underway when the defendant is elected president." In other words, criminal defendant Donald Trump got out of his legal troubles by getting elected president. The special counsel making it clear that his request to dismiss the election case has nothing to do with the merits of this case or the evidence he's compiled. Instead, it has to do with a constitutional contradiction that could have serious consequences for the rule of law in this country. Special counsel saying, quote, "The government's position on the merits of the defendant's prosecution has not changed, but the circumstances have. As a result of the election held on November 5th, 2024, the defendant will be certified as president-elect on January 6, 2025, and inaugurated on January 20th, 2025. This sets at odds two fundamental and compelling national interests. On the one hand, the Constitution's requirement that the president must not be unduly encumbered in fulfilling his weighted responsibilities. And on the other hand, the nation's commitment to the rule of law and the long-standing principle that no man in this country is so high that he is above the law."
Okay, we need to stop it right there. Yes, the Constitution might state that a quote-unquote president must not be unduly encumbered in the fulfilling of his weighty responsibilities. But that raises two questions for me. Actually, one question and one caveat. First, the question, how is pausing cases against him encumbering him? Nothing will be happening for 4 years. Nothing. And if they're going to try and make the argument that just knowing he has this case is looming over him, maybe that's something this tub of guts should have considered before he broke the law. Second, the caveat. And I would ask, shouldn't the caveat be, and shouldn't this apply to someone who actually gives a shit about his weighty constitutional duties? Someone who doesn't watch Fox News till noon, strolls down to the press briefing room and spews more lies than his press secretary already has, and brags about himself incessantly. As any informed, intelligent, and patriotic American knows full well, Donald Trump only ran this time to stay out of prison. And it worked, at least for now. But I'm of a mind that the second part of what Jack Smith said, namely our long-standing principle that no man in this country is so high he is above the law, that should be a much larger determining factor than this abject nonsense that Trump will be encumbered. He doesn't care. And you know, I don't think I was going to use this clip ever again after the election, but today I'm going to blow the dust off it and play it one more time. You know, for old time's sake.
I mean, he's cost a lot. I think we should lock him up now.
Well,
Alicia then turned to two of my two favorite legal analysts, both of whom appeared on this show, thankfully. First, my gal, Lisa Rubin.
Lisa, not unexpected.
Not unexpected at all. And in fact, you know, I was reminded of the T.S. Eliot poem earlier today because I just kept saying, this is the way the cases end, not with a bang but a whimper. Mm-hmm. This is not unexpected. What is unexpected is that Jack Smith is looking to dismiss these cases without prejudice, which of course leaves the possibility that they could be reopened at another point in time. On one hand, Alicia, it could be totally meaningless. One, to dismiss the cases without prejudice means that you're taking a flyer on whether or not they can be told or paused while Trump is in office. And of course, there's the other possibility that could render them meaningless, which is that he could just pardon himself. But Jack Smith essentially saying today, I'm willing to take the possibility of a toll. And if you want to pardon yourself, that's on you. You have to do that. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily. I'm not going to absolve you of that. I'll go as far as dismissing without prejudice because OLC policy requires me to, but no further.
Next, we hear from Andrew Weissman, former DOJ official, also the lead prosecutor in Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. And remind me again how that investigation was a hoax, will you? Andrew was asked about Smith's decision to dismiss without prejudice.
Well, I thought there was going to be no question that Jack Smith, because he is a member of the Department of Justice, was going to have to follow Department of Justice policy. And that, as you noted, Alicia, is that two Office of Legal Counsel opinions within the Department of Justice, one during the Nixon years, one during the Bill Clinton years, said that a sitting president cannot be charged at the time that he is president. So it was no question that this was going to be dismissed. But if you're going to dismiss it, I mean, why on God's green earth would Jack Smith seek to have this dismissed with prejudice, which means the case is definitively over? And why not just take the, as Lisa said, a flyer? Why not take the possibility that it would be dismissed without prejudice and it could be revived later? I do think that there is a big, that's sort of like not surprising. I do think there is an open issue as to whether Jack Smith should have simply waited and not, I mean, what he gets out of this is he gets it much more likely that Judge Chutkan is going to agree that it should be dismissed without prejudice, that it's not gone for all times and all purposes. But at the same token, by Jack Smith doing this and not requiring the new incoming president to do it himself, he's sort of doing, in some ways, the future administration's work for it. In other words, to the extent that there's any political hit, I'm not saying there is or isn't, but to the extent that there's any, why not say, you know what, Donald Trump, if you are going to dismiss a righteous prosecution, you're going to have to do it. We're not going to do it. So it's a trade-off because he's getting a more likely dismissal without prejudice. On the same, but sort of more into Molly's field, which is sort of political repercussions, he is in some ways doing the work for the incoming administration.
Yeah, but not doing the administration's work for them would lead to Trump kiboshing the whole thing, with it never to potentially being revived at a later date. So good call by Special Counsel Smith. Alicia went on to read a little more of the report on Smith's decision.
There was a piece from the Smith filing that I thought maybe answered part of Andrew's analysis and question. I'm going to read it to you, and then you tell me if you agree. The special counsel's office therefore sought Office of Legal Counsel's guidance on whether this case must be dismissed, whether the pending superseding indictment against the defendant could be held in abeyance until he is no longer immune from prosecution. OLC concluded that its 2000 opinion's categorical prohibition on the federal indictment of a sitting president, even if the case were held in abeyance, applies to this situation where a federal indictment was returned before the defendant takes office. I mean, does that mean he asks Garland's DOJ to weigh in on this? What does that tell us?
That it's exactly what it means. It means that they're in unprecedented constitutional situation and that they need some guidance from OLC, which many people understand as sort of an in-house counsel for the Department of Justice on weighty constitutional questions. I think the part of it that's interesting is Jack Smith is saying in this filing, OLC not only told me I have to get rid of this, but it told me I have to get rid of this before he's inaugurated. And not, Jack Smith is making the determination on his own, not on December 20th at 11:59 a.m., but now. So then, Alicia, that begs the question, why now? I have one thought as to why that might be, sure. And it has to do with the special counsel regulations. Noting, of course, that the Trump folks think that the special counsel regulations are unconstitutional and Jack Smith's very occupancy of that role is not proper. The special counsel regulations say that the special counsel should deliver a report to the Attorney General at the conclusion of his or her work. What does it mean to be at the conclusion of your work? I mean, Andrew knows better than anyone. One way you get to the conclusion of your work is you sort of transfer the cases that you're currently working on to other branches of DOJ, like the Southern District of New York or Main Justice. But maybe Jack Smith's take on this is, for me to get to the conclusion of my work, given that nobody else in the department is going to take up these cases, it means I have to dismiss them before I can deliver a report on my investigation to Merrick Garland that I intend to have see the light of day.
And herein lies another caveat. It is not Jack Smith's decision whether or not his final report does indeed see the light of day, as Lisa just said. That decision belongs to weepy Merrick Garland. And at this point, we don't know if he plans on doing that. I mean, I believe he absolutely should do that. But Merrick and I haven't exactly spoken in a while, so I'm not sure what his decision will be. A decision this weighty, to use the word of the day, just might cause torrential rain to fall from his eyes. Who knows? Andrew Weissman was then asked if he thinks we will ever get to see Jack Smith's final report. In his response, he also offers us some insight into Trump's treasonous stolen documents case in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really very much, we're sort of dancing on this head of a pin on sort of like, should it be dismissed with prejudice or without prejudice, and will it make any difference? And should he have waited to have the DOJ do it under the Trump administration versus doing it now? All of that is sort of, it's like, this is like the kind of thing Lisa and I like talking about sort of off camera, and it's super nerdy. But I think, Alicia, in many ways, the key issue is the one that you are raising, which is, will there be a report and will it see the light of day? I think there definitely will be a report because the special counsel rules require Jack Smith to write a report. Now, it does not have to be as lengthy as the Ken Starr report or the Mueller report. There's no requirement with respect to the length. It is also a report that initially is given by the special counsel to the Attorney General, in this case, Merrick Garland, in secret. That's required by the rules. So the special counsel has no power himself to make it public, but Merrick Garland does. I do think that Merrick Garland has signaled in the way he has treated other special counsel reports, Rob Hur to be precise, that he is certainly is a penchant for wanting those things to be public. The problem here is that there, at least with respect to the Mar-a-Lago case, there are two co-defendants who are, the case is proceeding as to them. There is no request by Jack Smith to dismiss as to those people. Now, Donald Trump can pardon them. He can also just direct his Department of Justice to dismiss the case. But because there are these two co-defendants in the Mar-a-Lago case, any report that is made public with respect to that part of the case, the under investigation, the Florida case, will be severely redacted because they will not want to prejudice that criminal case against those two defendants, even if, as everyone knows, it is highly likely that Donald Trump will get rid of that part of the case.
Okay, so Andrew Weissman thinks that Jack Smith's final report will indeed see the light of day. That's good. Now, not that that final report will matter to Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base. First, they won't read it. Many can't. And instead, they'll rely on the right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media to tell them it exonerates Trump and that the whole case was just another hoax and witch hunt. Second, those of us who will read it, we already hate Trump and know he's a criminal. So while this final report will feature much food for thought and provide a lot of political fodder, the question is, will it change anything? Time will tell. That said, I would surely like to see that report, even though I'm not likely to be on the air to offer my commentary on it when it's released. Lisa Rubin was then asked what she thought will happen to Trump's two co-defendants in his treasonous Florida case, Carlos de Oliveira and Walt Nauta.
I think Walt Nauta and de Oliveira are almost certainly going to be pardoned, particularly Walt Nauta, whose loyalty to the former and future president is unquestionable. You know, Alicia, you know that I have been to all four of the cases against former and future President Trump that have been tried, and at all of them, Walt Nauta was a presence. Walt Nauta doesn't go anywhere that Donald Trump doesn't take him at this point. I think those are likely to end up pardoned. But to Andrew's point, the pardon would come after Trump becomes president again. And therefore, there is a real dilemma with respect to the release of a report, even the delivery of a report with respect to that Mar-a-Lago case, even though, as it stands right now, that case has been dismissed. What is still pending is an appeal of the dismissal, which was premised on Judge Aileen Cannon's finding that Jack Smith didn't have any constitutional authority to bring it because he never should have been a special counsel in the first place.
Sickening, isn't it? And by the way, Walt Nauta was indicted on 6 counts: conspiracy to obstruct justice, withholding a document or record, corruptly concealing a document or record, corruptly concealing a document in a federal investigation, scheme to conceal, and making false statements and representations. He was the guy who moved boxes that included illegally retained classified documents and national defense-related documents from a storage room at Mar-a-Lago to Trump's residence. And he was caught on videotape doing so. Yeah, moving 64 boxes of, again, illegally retained classified documents and national defense-related documents to Trump's residence. Have any of you Trumpers ever asked yourselves, why would an ex-president need national defense-related documents that he had never read in the first place and never would? And don't embarrass yourselves and humiliate yourselves by trying keepsake. The question in my mind remains, who did this traitor sell them to? Oh, and to refer back to our discussion we've had on sexual pigs and rapists that Trump has been picking to destroy agencies he's appointing them to lead, did you know that while Walt Nauta was still in the Navy, he was accused of sexual harassment and revenge porn by several women in the spring of 2021, which led him to being reassigned and his security credentials being pulled. This was several weeks before he left the Navy and became a personal employee of Trump. Remember before Trump when the saying, "crime doesn't pay" was a thing? And it was something we taught our children? Just add that to the ever-growing list of items that Trump has destroyed that fall under the general category of decency. Today, indecency and sexual perversion are not only accepted, they seem to be prerequisites in order to be part of Team Trump. One can only imagine what position he would be being considered for if Jeffrey Epstein was still alive. Secretary of the Interior? Assistant Secretary of Education, but only for elementary schools, with maybe middle schools added as well? Andrew Weissman was then asked what, if anything, this decision by Smith means for Trump's RICO charges in Georgia. And while his response starts off positively, he quickly inserts an ominous but.
So the state cases cannot be dismissed by Donald Trump. As president, you do not have power to dismiss the Georgia case or the New York case. But there is a high likelihood that those cases would be put on pause. That is something that is being sort of litigated right now in the New York case, whether to be dismissed or put on pause. And the argument for that is really put aside that we're talking about Donald Trump. Do you really want, with respect to any president, 50 states that have the possibility of charging a sitting president and making it impossible for that person to do their work?
Yes, in fact, hell to the yes. If there is a preponderance of evidence that they've committed crimes against their country, again, F yes. As for them not being able to do their work, why would you want someone who's been suspected of committing crimes against their country to do their country's work? You wouldn't. Indict them and try them. That's what vice presidents are for, to step in when the president isn't able to. And if a president has been charged with a crime or crimes, he's not only not able to do his work, he shouldn't be allowed to do his work. And as he continued, and this doesn't happen often because Andrew Weissman is a knowledgeable, experienced, and competent attorney, and I'm not, but he says something I completely disagree with. A rarity, to be sure.
Trump, do you really want, with respect to any president, 50 states that have the possibility of charging a sitting president and making it impossible for that person to do their work? Yes, they could be charged after they leave the presidency, but during that time, there's sort of a supremacy clause argument that the federal government needs to be able to operate with its elected official. So those cases, I think, will at the very least be on hold during this time period. So this is the very bad news for people who want to see legal accountability one way or the other, which is with respect to 3 of the 4 cases, there will not be trials, during at least the next 4 years.
So let me ask you about that, Andrew, because I think you're landing exactly where most of our viewers will land, which was, will there ever be accountability, and was this all for naught?
So on the all for naught, I first want to commend New York State, not just because I'm a resident here and went to the trial and saw, what I would say is justice in action. And I'm not talking about the result. We saw a really wonderful judge, a sober, experienced judge. We saw a great lawyering on both sides of this case. We saw a serious jury. And there is a result. It pleased some, it displeased others, but that's the way our legal system worked.
Disagree, Andrew, and I know you offered the disclaimer that you weren't talking about the result, but you said we saw justice in action, we saw a wonderful, experienced judge, we did, serious jury, we did, and that this is the way the legal system works. No, I at least am not able or about to separate the result from the process. I believe the result is all that matters. And if Trump ends up skating on a trial for which he was convicted by a jury of his peers, although roadkill would be a peer to Trump, this is a massive failure of our legal system and a complete travesty for our rule of law. Oh, And Andrew said that we saw this great lawyering on both sides of the case. Really? Alina Habba? Fangirl Alina Habba? This Alina Habba?
Hi, guys. So I'm going to tell you a little known secret here. Alina Habba, senior advisor to President Trump. And, well, I'd love to say that I'm perfect. I'm not. I have a little head, and my ears don't fit in some of the mega ads. And guess what? I do. Wearing this new one because it fits so perfectly. I love Trump. Represent. God knows I do. I also love this country. Get behind us. Link below, and then you get one of these babies. See you soon.
That's an attorney. That's an attorney. A Trump attorney. Great lawyering on both sides. Have to disagree, Andrew. But you got to give Alina Habba one thing. She is pretty enough to be that stupid. And after Andrew's last remarks, with which I took umbrage, Andrew concluded with this.
But that's the way our legal system worked. And that is the one sort of shining light in terms of the criminal justice system. As I've repeatedly said, the rest of our criminal justice system, especially compared to other countries that have managed to figure out how to hold political leaders to account in real trials, not show trials, we get an F. But Judge Basham stands out from that as somebody who was able to get his case to trial to a verdict. But I think for many people, this is something where this sentiment in Jack Smith's filing today that you quoted from, Alicia, about no man being above the law, feels very hollow. Because you have one man who has managed to really escape justice in all of the various ways that feels very unsatisfying in terms of the rule of law in this country. And it makes us more akin to regimes that we heretofore have denigrated.
Okay, a bit of redemption there. Overall, we get an F. And I stand by what I said. Unless the verdict is carried out to fruition and the guilty party is not only sentenced and serves his sentence, I don't think any of the individual elements of the case should be lauded. I don't. It seems like something the right criticizes the left for all the time. A participation trophy. Again, if Trump skates on a trial in which a guilty verdict has been rendered, it is a travesty. It is a complete miscarriage of justice. Not that I think Andrew would disagree with that. I think he was just trying to, demonstrate a proverbial silver lining behind the Trump cloud. I'm just not in that benevolent a mood right now. My gal Alicia then posed this question to my other gal, Lisa Rubin. I have a lot of gals, a whole harem full, in fact. What are you going to do?
There's both the lack of accountability and then there is the door open for retribution. There's reporting in the Washington Post about Trump's plans for Jack Smith's team. This is what they've written. Plans to fire the entire team that worked with Special Counsel Jack Smith to pursue 2 federal prosecutions against the former president, including career attorneys, typically protected from political retribution, according to 2 individuals close to Trump's transition. What type of signal does that send?
Sends a really poor one. And I mean, to continue Andrew's metaphor, here's another place on the democracy report card where the United States looks to be earning an increasingly poor grade. I will say that the spokesperson for the Trump transition team in that same piece disavowed some of the reporting, saying nobody who is not part of the transition knows what the transition is planning to do. But do I think there's some grain of truth to that reporting at the very least? Absolutely. And Elisa, even if you don't fire people who are career staff of the Department of Justice who are loaned out to Jack Smith's team, it doesn't mean you can't make their lives miserable in a host of other ways. You can reassign them to other positions in the Department of Justice for which they are ill-prepared and likely would not want to take. You can investigate them through a number of places in the Department of Justice itself, the Office of Professional management or misconduct is one place, the inspector general is another place. You can refer them to disciplinary proceedings in the bars to which they are members. And of course, we've seen all of this happen before to people who were affiliated with former and future President Trump with respect to January 6th. So can we expect there to be some imitation of the same techniques used to penalize lawyers in the past applied to those who are trying to obtain justice here? I think we can.
I think we can too. But what do I know? But Lisa, of course there's some grain of truth to that story. Trump ran on not only firing Jack Smith and his team, he ran on prosecuting them. He ran on firing a boatload of dedicated, patriotic, bipartisan career civil servants and prosecuting them as well. And worse, than replacing them with lawless bootlickers loyal not to our Constitution, but to Trump and Trump alone. And what Lisa was saying, and it confused me at first, when you look at the punishments attorneys associated with Trump were subjected to for lying on Trump's behalf in court, she said, can we expect the same from Trump towards attorneys who were just doing their jobs and trying to obtain justice as our legal system demands of them? Yeah, we can expect that. Trump ran on that too. And you know, his brain-dead MAGA cult base or his media, they will have no problem with that because they have allowed themselves to be brainwashed into believing all this lawfare nonsense, all this weaponization of government garbage. Therefore, it is only dear leader's right and his obligation to seek revenge against a democracy that just isn't working, and one that goes after poor, oppressed, innocent angels like Donald Trump. And yet another nail in our democracy's coffin. So yeah, I think there's more than a grain of truth to that story, Lisa, with all due respect. But hey, you are my gal after all, and Alicia, that goes double for you. They're my gals. What can I say? Hey folks, it's been a slice. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you watching. I managed to get back on TikTok today. I tried just a few seconds after 11:15, which is when they told me I could get back on, and they said I was still banned. I tried again at 11:17, and I got back on. So it's a pleasure to see you TikTokers. We should be able to do the whole hour tomorrow. Go figure. And we will do that, folks. We'll do this all over again tomorrow, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
Doug Basham. For excitement and